heart words changed the way a lot of teachers teach high-frequency words. And that's a good thing. But there are some ways this approach can go sideways, and that's what I want to talk about in today's video. If you're new here, my name is Anna Geiger. I'm the author of Reach All Readers, host of the Reach All Readers podcast, and creator of the Reach All Readers Plus membership. And my mission is to help you understand and apply the science of reading in practical, classroom-friendly ways. So let's start with the terminology. What are heart words? I think many of us think of heart words as sight words. And traditionally for teachers, sight words have been words that are irregular that we have to teach students to memorize. Whereas heart words are also irregular words, but instead of just teaching kids to memorize them, we teach them to analyze the words and notice what parts are regular and what parts are irregular. Most of us know by now that scientists tell us that sight words are actually words that you recognize by sight. And so our goal then is to take the words our students learn, particularly those high frequency words, and turn them into sight words. So we can just set aside the term sight words for now. We're really talking about high frequency words. And when we're talking about heart words, we're talking about irregular high frequency words. Now that opens a whole can of worms about what words are irregular or are not. But for now, let's just go along with the definition of a heart word, which is a word that has a phonics pattern that students have not been taught yet, or is a word that is permanently irregular, a word with a pattern that doesn't match many other words and something children will just have to memorize. When we think about the old way of having students learn sight words, it was often just the teacher saying the word and having students repeat it, right? So the word is once. Repeat, once. Read the word, once. I remember my first year of teaching first grade, I had a little girl who was struggling after spending a couple years in kindergarten and still couldn't read even the word the. So I sat down with her and tried to help her memorize the word the. I wrote it all over the paper in different places, just kept drilling her on it over and over. As I recall, it took several months for her to memorize the word the. Meanwhile, I was doing a lot of work with her in her leveled, predictable pattern books. Really sorry to say that. I really failed her because I didn't understand what research tells us about how to teach beginning reading. Certainly, heart words would have been a much better approach than what I was doing. I first learned about heart words through Really Great Readings videos. So they have little videos where they talk students through these words. They look at the parts that are phonically regular and they tell them to sound those out. And the other parts they have to memorize or learn by heart. And they put a little heart above those unfamiliar parts of the word, or the parts we might call irregular. This is a really good thing to have kids notice the spellings for each sound, because that's how we orthographically map words. We connect the sounds with the spelling with the meaning and store it in our brain. So it's a really good thing that heart words teach students to analyze the words rather than memorize them by shape. Let's look at a popular heart word, said. With this one, typically the way it's taught is students notice that S is spelled with S, E is normally spelled with E, but here it's spelled AI, and D is spelled with D. So they would put a heart above the AI because that's an unexpected spelling. I don't think there has to be anything wrong with that, but sometimes I think we might use the heart a little too prematurely because we could look closer at the spelling and find out it's not so crazy after all. If you're familiar with the work of Pete Bowers, he often talks about this word in his examples when he's talking about structured word inquiry. So mainly he's talking about how words are built. And when he looks at the word said, it actually has something in common with the words paid and laid. So it goes say, said, pay, paid, lay, laid. The spelling patterns are the same, even though the pronunciation is different. So the point is, in the word said, AI is not being used to spell eh. It's being used to make the word say turn into its past tense, said. The heart word approach is a tool, and like any tool, it can be used well or it can be overused. Now, am I saying that you need to teach your kindergartners the story of said and how it's connected to paid and laid? Probably not. Certainly, though, that would be useful once you get to first grade and beyond. So I think we just need to be judicious about how we hand those hearts out and not hand them out too prematurely. Let's take the word see. Certainly a word we're going to find in kindergarten decodable books, but including a pattern that's not in most kindergarten phonics programs. So EE, spelling E. You could teach your students that word and have them put a heart above EE because they haven't been taught that pattern, or you could just teach the pattern early. Just tell it to them right there. EE spells E. I think it's pretty easy to remember. It's so common. Do we really need to call it irregular when they're going to be coming across that pattern many, many times? That's an example where I question whether we need to be throwing out a heart. We also want to make sure that the practice that students do with their heart words is rooted in phonemes and graphemes. So I recently watched a presentation at Fiona Hamilton's Digital Word Inquiry in Action 2026 conference, and I loved it because we got snapshots of different teachers in different classrooms. So make sure you get on her mailing list at WordTorque, that's WORDTORQUE, so you can learn when the next conference is. But what I loved is we got a sneak peek inside of classrooms and teachers shared what they did with their students. And there was a pair of teachers who were showing us how they would have students practice their high frequency words at home. So they would have them read the word, let's say the word is they. They would feel the phonemes, a, and then they would tap spell it. So THEY. So you tap for each grapheme, not necessarily each letter. Let's say they're learning the word she. They would read the word she, feel the phonemes, sh, e, and then tap spell, S-H-E, she. This kind of practice keeps students connected to the sounds and the letters that represent them, and that's what we want. Something we need to be careful about too with heart words is getting too hung up on what qualifies. So we'll often see teachers in Facebook groups really excited about learning about heart words, which is wonderful, but they're arguing about what is a heart word, what's not a heart word. They may be concerned, like, is this word supposed to be a heart word? Where does the heart go? It's not scientific at all. It's really just what is going to help your students remember the word better. Maybe putting a heart there, like with the word see, might just be too much, not necessary. They can just remember that E spells E. Or maybe putting the heart word is really useful for a particular child who's always misreading the word what. They're always forgetting that the A spells so that heart word is a good reminder for them. Heart words should be a tool, not some rigid system. And certainly not a permanent label, because if it's a pattern you're going to teach later and then you teach it, the heart goes away. Another question to think about is, should you post heart words on a wall? This was an interesting conversation I saw in a Facebook group. Holly Lane, one of the authors of You Fly, the popular phonics program, weighed in, and she said, think about how when some of us were young, and I include myself here, before cell phones, we had to memorize our phone numbers, right? So we memorized our home number, our parents' work numbers, our friends' numbers, maybe our church numbers, maybe our school number. And we did that because if we didn't have them memorized, we couldn't contact them. Nowadays, though, how many phone numbers do we have memorized? I know mine, I know my husband's, and it took me a long time to remember his. I have 3 teens with phones, and I don't remember any of their phone numbers because I can just pick up my phone and get it. There's no urgency there. So that's something to keep in mind. If you put all the words on a wall, students don't really have to learn how to spell them, and we want them to learn how to spell them. So actually, Holly Lane recommends giving them each like a personal dictionary. So there's some effort involved in looking up the word and spelling it versus just looking on a wall, and that might encourage students to be more proactive about learning to spell those heart words. So in general, are heart words helping or hurting? I'd say helping. They're a thoughtful approach that moves high-frequency word instruction in the right direction, certainly much better than whole word memorization. But the heart is a tool, not a shortcut. I think we need to always be looking for why a word is spelled the way it is and think about whether teaching that could be useful, perhaps more useful than just putting a heart on a part of the word, or maybe we do both. But the more judicious we can be about handing out hearts, the better. So use heart words well, and they'll help. Overdo it, and you might be overcomplicating things. If this is an area you'd like to go deeper on, teaching high-frequency words, you're invited to my Transform Your High-Frequency Word Instruction Challenge. You will learn which words are truly irregular, how morphology factors into high-frequency word instruction, and what a solid teaching routine looks like. You can join using the link below this video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.